All right, so in this video, we're going to define and distinguish between the pulmonary and systemic circuits. We're going to describe the general location, size, and shape of the heart. We will talk about the pericardial sac that helps enclose the heart. We're going to describe the structure and function of cardiac muscle tissue. We are also going to look a little closer at the four main heart valves and describe their role in maintaining the one-way directional blood flow through the heart. And then we're going to explain how the muscle generates and uses energy. The circulatory system has two main parts, the pulmonary circuit and the systemic circuit. The pulmonary circuit involves the right side of the heart, which pumps blood to the lungs for gas exchange, where it picks up oxygen and releases carbon dioxide and then returns the blood back to the heart. The systemic circuit is handled by the left side of the heart, which pumps oxygenated blood to the rest of the body and then brings deoxygenated blood back to the heart. And so here you can see an illustration of the pulmonary and systemic circuits. On the left side of the heart, we have fully oxygenated blood that arrives from the lungs via the pulmonary veins. That enters into the heart, leaves the heart by way of the aorta, and goes to the rest of our tissues and organs. And then on the right side of the heart receives oxygen-poor blood, and then by way of the pulmonary trunk and pulmonary arteries, oxygen-poor blood is delivered to the lungs. I'm getting tongue-tied, sorry. To the lungs so that gas exchange can occur. All right, so let's talk about the position, size, and shape of the heart. The heart is located in the mediastinum, that little space in the thoracic cavity wedged in between the pair of lungs. The base is the wide superior portion of the heart, and that's where many of our large vessels attach, like our aorta and our superior vena cava, the pulmonary trunk, etc. And then the apex is the tapered inferior end, and it tilts towards the left. In the adult, the heart weighs roughly 10 ounces. It's about 3.5 inches wide at the base and 5 inches from base to apex. At any age, the heart is the size of the fist. During, just a fun fact, during gestational development, when the mother is between 30, I would say between 25 to probably 35 weeks along, the heart is the size of the nail on your thumb. Okay, so really, really tiny. Now imagine an x-ray image of the chest where you can clearly see the silhouette of the heart. The heart appears as a dark, roughly cone-shaped structure located right there, dab in the center between those lungs. And so you can also, if you're looking at this x-ray image, you can make out the rib cage. You can see the spine surrounding it. And then you can see the heart's outline standing out against the lighter surrounding structures. The pericardium is a double-walled sac that surrounds and protects the heart. It lets the heart beat without friction, which gives it the space it needs to be able to expand, but also resists it from expanding too much. We don't want the tissue to tear apart from an expansion that's too much. The pericardium is anchored to the diaphragm below and the sternum in the front. We have the parietal pericardium, which is the outer layer of the sac, with a tough fibrous layer and a thin, smooth, serous layer underneath. We also have the visceral pericardium, which we sometimes refer to as the epicardium, and it represents this thin, smooth layer that directly covers the heart. Inside the sac is the pericardial cavity, which holds a small amount of fluid to reduce the friction. If the pericardium becomes inflamed, it can lead to a condition called pericarditis, which causes painful inflammation in these membranes. And so this image shows the pericardium, the protective double-walled sac that surrounds the heart, the outer layer called the pericardium directly, or the entire thing is the pericardium. The outer layer, called the parietal pericardium, directly covers the heart. The space between these layers, known as the pericardial cavity, if I get my laser pointer out here, this little space here, contains that fluid that we talked about that reduces the friction as the heart beats, okay? The heart wall has three main layers. We have the epicardium, which is the outermost layer, also referred to as the visceral pericardium. It is a thin, smooth membrane that acts as the heart's protective covering. We have the thick middle layer. We refer to that as the myocardium. It is made up of cardiomyocytes, which are just cardiac muscle cells. It is made up of thick muscular tissue that can contract to pump blood throughout the body. And then finally, we have the endocardium. This is the innermost layer. This is the layer that lines the heart chambers and valves, providing a smooth surface for blood to flow through without much friction. So the heart's going to be organized into four chambers. We have the right and left atria when we're talking about them in their plural form. If we're talking about one in the single form, we just call it the atrium. But we have the right and left atria on the superior, those are the superior chambers. And then we have the right and left ventricles, which are the two inferior chambers. The atria are responsible for receiving blood that returns to the heart, whether it's returning from the body or if it's returning from the lungs, they will enter into the atria. And then the ventricles will pump blood out into arteries to be delivered away from the heart. Now, covering the atria, you're going to see these structures called auricles. An auricle is a small ear-shaped pouch that extends from each atrium of the heart. And so there's one auricle attached to the left atrium and there's one attached to the right atrium. These structures help increase the capacity of the atria, allowing them to be able to hold more blood. They also play a role in helping blood flow smoothly into the ventricles. The atrioventricular sulcus is going to separate the atria and ventricles. The interventricular sulcus is going to lie on top of the wall that separates the ventricles. We call that the interventricular septum. And so this is going to divide the left and right ventricles from each other. Within the sulci, you're going to find the coronary arteries. Okay, so if you're trying to study the heart model for your lab exam and you're responsible for the coronary arteries, you want to find the sulci because if you follow those, you'll be able to find those coronary arteries, the left and right. So the heart features valves, and valves ensure one-way flow of blood through the heart, and there are four valves that we will discuss. We have the atrioventricular valves, sometimes abbreviated AV, and they're going to control blood flow between the atria and the ventricles. We have the right AV valve. It features three cusps, so we call it the tricuspid valve. We have the left AV valve between the left atrium and the left ventricle, and it has two cusps. We refer to it as the mitral valve, and then sometimes you will hear it called the bicuspid valve because it has those two cusps. Chordae tendineae are collagenous fibers that connect the atrioventricular valves to the papillary muscles on the floor of the ventricles. Semilunar valves are going to control flow into our great arteries. They open and close because of blood flow and the pressure gradients that exist before and after the valve. The pulmonary semilunar valve is located in the opening between the right ventricle and the pulmonary trunk. And the aortic semilunar valve is located in the opening between the left ventricle and the aorta. The last thing that I'll note, we refer to the atrioventricular valves as the AV valves. We refer to the semilunar valves as the SL valves. But they're located in very distinct places, so please understand which one we're talking about. So with the AV valves, are we talking about the tricuspid or the bicuspid? With the semilunar valves, are we talking about the pulmonary SL valve or the aortic SL valve? Cardiac muscle features cardiomyocytes, which are striated, short, thick branch cells. Each will feature one nucleus surrounded by light-staining mass of glycogen. Now, when cardiac muscle is damaged, such as like after a heart attack, it doesn't regenerate like other tissues. Instead, the damage is mostly repaired by fibrosis, where scar tissue forms in the place of the damaged muscle. This scar tissue doesn't contract like normal heart muscle, which can affect the heart's ability to pump blood efficiently. Intercalated discs are specialized connections between our heart muscle cells. They allow the cardiomyocytes to stick together and transmit electrical signals quickly from one cell to the next. This helps the heart contract in a coordinated way, ensuring that the heart beats as a unified, efficient pump. And so here you can see the cardiomyocytes as reflected under the microscope. Let me grab my laser pointer here. You can see the centrally located nuclei within each cell. You can see how the cardiac muscle cells are branched. Another thing to note, they're all highlighted here, but we have the intercalated disc. So where one cell ends, another cell begins. These are connections in between neighboring cells. Not highlighted, we have an intercalated disc here where my laser is here. So all these little lines are what we refer to as the intercalated disc, those junctions in between the cells. Now, cardiac muscle relies almost entirely on aerobic respiration to produce ATP, making it highly efficient and resistant to fatigue. It contains a lot of myoglobin, and you're also going to find a lot of glycogen for energy storage, and it has very large mitochondria that supply energy. The mitochondria can fill up to 25% of the cell. Now, the heart is going to primarily use fatty acids and glucose for fuel, but it can adapt to other sources like our ketones and amino acids and lactic acid. Unlike muscles that fatigue quickly, cardiac muscle rarely experiences fatigue because it avoids anaerobic respiration and fermentation, allowing it to function continuously throughout our life.